The government in London is following the example of the EU and introducing a border adjustment levy for climate-damaging raw material imports. But too late criticizes the country's industry. Well, still the British government will introduce a border adjustment tax on imported raw materials whose production causes high CO2 emissions from 2027. The levy will ensure carbon-intensive products from overseas, such as steel and ceramics, are priced comparable to those made in the UK. That is what Chancellor of the Exchequer or Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said in London. Great Britain is reacting to a similar tax that was to be introduced by the EU a year earlier. London wants to use its own levy to prevent climate-damaging raw materials from being diverted to Great Britain from countries with less stringent climate protection standards. The British industry associations Make UK and Steel UK criticized the fact that the new regulations came a year too late, despite the steel sector having repeatedly warned the authorities about how vulnerable the UK would be if it did not adhere to the EU implementation timetable. The government today appears to be actively planning for exactly this scenario, complained the head of the Steel Association, Gareth Stace. According to the association's calculations, no CO2 taxes would be levied on 90% of the steel produced worldwide. In Great Britain and the EU, however, companies with high CO2 emissions have to buy tradable emission certificates. The new tax is intended to ensure that imported products such as iron, steel, aluminum, ceramics and cement are subject to a comparable carbon price to goods manufactured in Great Britain. That's what the Treasury said in London on Monday. And this would create equal competitive opportunities. Department Chief Jeremy Hunt said the move should give UK industry the confidence to invest in decarbonisation to help reduce global carbon emissions further towards the net zero target. Recently, demands have become louder that the British government must prevent so-called emissions shifting. British companies should not be undercut by cheaper but higher carbon imports from countries that charge a lower or no carbon price. The future fees will depend on the amount of carbon emitted in the production of the imported product and the gap between the carbon price in the country of manufacture and in Great Britain, as the Treasury said. The authorities cited a survey according to which the majority of companies see the shifting of CO2 emissions as a risk. The EU's Carbon Border Management Mechanism, or CBAM, is a groundbreaking initiative that aims to put a price on carbon emissions for imported goods. It is the world's first carbon border adjustment mechanism, and it is expected to have a significant impact on the global economy. The CBAM is designed to ensure that imported goods do not have an unfair advantage over domestically produced goods that have to comply with the EU's emission trading system, or ETS. The ETS is a market-based system that sets a cap on the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions that can be emitted from installations in the EU. Companies that emit CO2 have to purchase allowances to cover their emissions, and the price of these allowances is determined by supply and demand. The CBAM will work as follows. Importers will be required to report the CO2 emissions associated with the goods they import into the EU. This will involve using a methodology developed by the European Commission to calculate the emissions associated with the production of the goods. Importers will then have to purchase carbon allowances to cover the emissions associated with their imports. The price of these allowances will be the average price of allowances in the EU ETS over a specified period. The CBAM will not apply to all goods, but only to those that are considered to have a high carbon footprint. These goods are likely to include products such as steel, cement, aluminum, and electricity. And the CBAM has several objectives. To prevent carbon leakage, which is when companies relocate their production to countries with less stringent climate policies. This would allow them to avoid the costs of complying with the ETS, and to ensure that imported goods are not priced below those produced domestically. This would create a level playing field for businesses and encourage them to invest in cleaner technologies. And to raise revenue that can be used to support climate action. The revenue from the CBAM is expected to be significant, and it could be used to fund investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and other climate-friendly measures. The CBAM is expected to have a number of economic and environmental impacts as well. The CBAM could increase the cost of imported goods, which could lead to higher prices for consumers. However, the impact on prices is likely to be modest, and it could be offset by the revenue raised from the CBAM. The CBAM could also lead to job losses in some sectors, such as steel and cement production. However, these job losses are likely to be offset by the creation of new jobs in those clean energy industries. And the CBAM is expected to encourage businesses to reduce their emissions. And this could lead to cleaner production processes and the adoption of renewable energy sources. And the CBAM could also help to prevent carbon leakage, which is a major challenge for climate action. When companies relocate their production to countries with less stringent climate policies, it can undermine efforts to reduce global emissions. Overall, the CBAM is a significant step towards making the EU's economy more climate-friendly. It is a complex policy, but it has the potential to make a real difference in the fight against climate change. And if Britain wants to copy the EU now, they are very welcome. But another very British topic at the moment is hydrogen. Hydrogen is explosive and expensive, and now the British government has cancelled a heating pilot project before it even began. In Great Britain, there is yet another setback for the government's attempts to test the use of hydrogen in heating private homes. This planned pilot project in the small town of Redcar in northern England is cancelled. The reason for this is that there is too much opposition among the local population due to safety concerns and high costs. Hydrogen is indeed highly explosive and significantly more dangerous than fossil gas. The planned attempt to build a hydrogen village in Ellesmere Port near Liverpool had previously failed due to protests. However, the British government wants to continue to test whether up to 20% hydrogen can be added to the networks that supply gas to gas boiler heaters on the island. In December 2023, the UK government announced plans to re-examine its hydrogen heating strategy, including the possibility of scaling back or even abandoning the Hydrogen Village pilot project. This decision was made in response to the concerns about the feasibility and the cost of transitioning to hydrogen heating, as well as the lack of public support for the project. The UK government has announced that it will be pausing one of its pilot projects for heating homes and also businesses with hydrogen. The project, which was due to begin in 2025, would have seen 1,000 homes in Ellesmere Port in Cheshire converted to hydrogen heating. The government has said that it is pausing the project in order to carry out further research into the safety and cost of hydrogen heating. It will also be consulting with local residents to ensure that they are fully informed about the project and their concerns are addressed. The decision to pause the project has been welcomed by some local residents who have raised concerns about the safety of hydrogen heating and the disruption it would cause to their homes. However, other residents have expressed disappointment, saying that they are keen to see hydrogen heating become a reality as a way of reducing their carbon emissions. The government has said that it is still committed to the development of hydrogen heating in the UK, but that it is now taking a more cautious approach. It is now looking at a number of different options for how to roll out hydrogen heating, including using it to heat new homes, retrofitting existing homes, and developing hybrid systems that can use both hydrogen and natural gas. The decision to pause the Ellesmere Port project is a setback for the UK's hydrogen heating ambitions, but it is not the end of the story as it seems. The government says it's still committed to developing hydrogen heating as a way of decarbonizing the UK's heating sector, and it is likely to continue to explore different options in the coming years. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.